You've decided you're ready to become a parent, and suddenly you're overwhelmed with people who feel they have the right to inform you on the correct way to conceive, give birth, what fears you should have, and the proper way to parent. How do you filter through the opinions? How do you know what's trustworthy information and what's a myth or just plain outdated? Welcome to the Birthies podcast. Join your host Michelle Smith and her guests as they cut through the noise and fear by sharing valuable tips, tools, and proven methods that help you connect with your own inner wisdom as you navigate the sacred journey that is pregnancy, birth, and parenthood in a more relaxed and confident manner. This podcast does not constitute, nor is it intended, as medical advice.
Hello, Birthies families. Welcome to this heartfelt space. I'm your host, Michelle Smith. This episode is a part of my Listening to Midwives series. And in this series, it is my intention to create a sacred space for midwives to voice what's on their heart and in their soul. This series is for anyone that loves and supports midwives, or for anyone that wants a deeper understanding of what midwifery care is. Today, I am so honored and excited to have with me Heather Barson. Heather is an independent midwife and doula practicing in Northeast Utah. She also provides various placenta services, including at-home placenta stem cell consulting. Seeing her rural community was in need of more doulas, and the local hospitals were somewhat hostile to the few professional doulas in the area, she co-founded the Uinta Basin Doula Association. With this organization, she and her colleagues befriended the hospitals so their clients could get better care, advertised heavily on behalf of doulas in general, so professional doulas could charge what they are worth, and begin training and supporting professional doulas locally. Seeing another need during the COVID-19 pandemic, she recently founded the Coalition for Ethical Maternity Care, a national organization open to all problem-solving members of the maternity care team. With this coalition, she hopes to see more facilities model their COVID-19 maternity care policies after facilities that choose reasonable and respectful precautions over the ones that are harmful to mothers and babies. Welcome, Heather, to the Birthies podcast. I am so excited to have you here with me today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So what brought us together in this conversation is COVID-19 and also my podcast series, Listening to Midwives. And you recently started a coalition to help advocate for families in maternity care during this pandemic, during this health crisis, and even beyond. But before we get started, can you share a bit about what brought you to your midwifery work, please?
Oh, absolutely. It was kind of a bumpy ride. I was not one of those people who grew up thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to be a midwife when I grow up. And I haven't met a lot of those actually, but I kind of got dragged into this role. And I say dragged, and it sounds really reluctant that way. And it's not. It started out, with my own birthing history. I'm actually a musician. I play French horn. I actually have a bachelor's degree in music education, and I wanted to be a studio performer, and the education was just kind of my fallback. And so this was not the direction I expected to take with my life, going down this completely other path. There are some carryover things. I'm an empath, and that works really great in the music world because I can really connect with the music and I can help the audience connect with the music. And it's just kind of a beautiful feeling when you can do that. And you know how useful that is in birth work as well.
Right.
But I had my first baby via C-section, and it was fine. It was fine. In hindsight, I look back and go, yeah, but but at the time I didn't have any problems with it until I got pregnant again, and I was trying to decide, okay, do I want to go the VBAC route or just a repeat C-section? I don't know. And so that's kind of where things started, where I started to go down the research rabbit hole and learning things and studying things. And really studying things, lots of studying and learning. I was reading on the VBAC Facts blog before she was even really a thing,
Mm.
and and stuff like that. Because this was 10 years ago or something like that, longer. Anyway, yeah, a little longer. And then I finally made the decision. Okay, I wanted to have a big family. All right, VBAC sounds like a good intention to set. I was into reality that things happen too, but that seemed like a good intention. And I told my doctor about it, and he's like, "That's great. I'm super VBAC supportive, but the hospital is not."
Mm.
And that hadn't occurred to me that would be a thing. Because why would it be? I mean, that's my decision, right? In fact, actually, that was one of the things that was where I experienced a lot of trauma from this experience here. And that was one of the main things was I was speaking to my doctor, and he was saying, nope, we can't do this. And it was a recent change too. It was a recent policy change. So I kind of had the rug pulled out from under me.
Oh, no.
And not that makes it any, not that that makes it any more whatever, but either, even if it had been an old policy, it wouldn't have been great. But I remember leaving that office, and at the time, I didn't feel like I had a voice yet. I was still really young, hadn't really had to use my voice very often. And I remember leaving the office that day, and the last thing he said to me was, "It's just too risky." And in my mind, it was like alarm bells blaring. Isn't that my decision? Hello?
Right.
But I couldn't even get those words out because I was just so shocked. There was some deceit involved as well. And so it was all really traumatic. In the state I was in at the time, it was illegal for midwives to attend, which I wasn't even considering anyway because I thought midwives were crazy, which I just laughed at now. Anyway, that's just kind of funny. So anyways, I had a repeat C-section that in my mind was forced because I was not given a choice. And if you're not given a choice, isn't that the same as being forced? Yeah, sure, nobody held me down, but essentially I could either show up, or I could do it at home by myself, or I could fight really, really, really hard and have to face all these micro and macro aggressions that I didn't even understand yet because I was only just entering this rabbit hole.
Right.
And work really hard. And who wants to fight when they're in labor? That's
Right.
such a vulnerable time. It's just not a reasonable expectation for someone to have.
I agree with you.
Yeah. So I felt like between the really bad choices I was given, that agreeing in quotes to a repeat C-section was the safest, even though it was not my choice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So after that, I thought things would be fine, and they were not fine. So I had pretty severe symptoms. I'm going to say symptoms of PTSD because I was never formally diagnosed, because part of it came with a severe fear of all doctors. So that just was not happening.
Mm.
But I met every single criteria, and it was really severe. For a long time, I was not functional. And one of the ways I manifested some of these symptoms was hyper focusing on birth research, and I started with VBAC research and women's rights, and especially in childbirth, because that's what it was. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, why I was responding this way, and what my options could be in the future, because I knew my family wasn't done and I wasn't going to go back to that system anymore. So what were my options? And so I spent every waking hour learning about birth and about alternatives, and reading the research and really studying the research and comparing the things that came out. And, every waking hour for several years adds up to a lot of hours.
Right.
So
Right.
they gave out PhDs in these things. I could easily get one. So, and not in a very healthy way. Fortunately, before I started attending births, I had myself a bit of a miraculous healing from those symptoms. So I did find a midwife who was willing to stick her neck out for me and cross over some state lines and push some boundaries with me. And so for my next baby, I had a baby at home, and it was fantastic. And I thought, oh my goodness, I had no idea that birth could be like this. I had no idea. The prenatal care was so much better. Anyway, you know these things.
Right.
But I was so floored by the difference in the level of care. And I remember a friend of mine afterwards, I was telling her how amazing it was. And she said, "Oh, you'd make such a great midwife." And I'm like, what? Who said anything about that? I don't want to be a midwife. No, that's too much responsibility. I'm not into that, right? Like maybe I don't know what I could do. I couldn't be a doula either, which, I'm not too now. Like I'm sure I would just punch somebody and get kicked out of the hospital, which I haven't done yet. I'm very tempted sometimes. Anyway, but yeah, so these were all the things going through my head. Somewhere along those lines, my husband lost his job and we needed to move. So I didn't have the option of, using the same midwife that I had. And that was discouraging for me. And I was praying, because I do that a lot. I have a lot of arguments with God. And and I was looking into the area where we were looking at, where he had been offered a job. And of course, the first thing on my mind was, gosh, there need to be good midwives up there. And I only found one midwife on there that had an online presence at all. And I could tell that she and I would not be a good match. And so in my arguing with God, I was like, oh my goodness, can you just send somebody up there who practices midwifery the way that I feel like, the way that I need it? And, the voice came back was, you're somebody.
Wow.
I'm like, oh, shoot. But that's, that was my moment there. That was the call to action. It wasn't something that I'd planned to do. It wasn't really something I wanted to do. The cool thing is, when I have conversations with God like that, they usually come with motivation and confirmation as well. So the reluctance went away. Well, not completely away. The mind part was still there, but in my heart, I knew that was what I needed to do. And, started figuring out how to do that, because I had no idea where to start. Just started ordering books and getting books. And then when I did move up I live up in Roosevelt, Utah now. And when I got up there, I was also thinking to myself, oh, great, this is an opportunity to start over and pretend I'm normal, right? And my husband is a music teacher. And so at his first concert, he announces that we had a home birth. And I'm like, oh, dang it, there goes that. It turned out to be a great thing, though, because I had several families approach me who were like, oh, you had a home birth? That's fabulous. So did I. Do you want the number of my midwife? Yes, I do. Very much so. So I found a midwife up here that I could study with, and that's kind of where I ended up on that route, and, got doula training in there too, and partly as a prerequisite for my midwifery apprenticeship.
That is a good idea, I think.
Yeah.
I think so.
Oh, yeah. At the time, I didn't understand, and she was trying to explain it to me. And now that I'm a midwife, and we get people all the time, oh, I want to be a midwife. Can I apprentice? And, they try once and then they're done.
Right.
I get it now.
Yeah. I've always thought, if you really want to be a midwife, because working in the birth center, you would have student midwives, and they had never even done doula work or anything. And they it was almost romanticized and didn't understand the commitment.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's such a commitment, and the way that it impacts your life and your family life. And it's
being on call.
So I have a quick question, kind of circling back, because I think it could be useful for the listeners. When you said that you were looking for a midwife and she had an online presence and you could tell that you didn't resonate, can you share a little bit about how you came to that conclusion? Because I think, like I said, I think it'd be helpful for people, to learn to trust their gut.
Yeah, a little bit. In this case, it was pretty specific red flag, but for sure, I just use my gut so much in so many things.
Right.
I mean, I read and I research and I use all that too, but I can't do it just based on that. There's so many right ways to do things, but there's a right way for you and there's a right way for your situation. And there's really no way to know that except by tuning into yourself and to, your higher power, if you have one. And in this case, there was a weird statement on there that made it sound like if you've ever had a C-section or if you've ever had a failed VBAC or something, that it's because of something that you did wrong. And that just did not resonate with me at all. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I don't know about that.
Yeah. I can feel that in my gut.
Exactly. Yeah. I've since met with her, and I don't know if that was really her intention to communicate that or not. We still definitely would not be a good match, but I don't have any hard feelings towards her for sure. But yeah, definitely, just listen to your gut.
Right. Getting education and listening to your gut. There's a parenting series out, and I don't want to bash a parenting series, but it's been around a long time. And one of the things, I know it's been revised, but something that concerned me was, as I was reading it, it kept talking about if you're having trouble breastfeeding, that essentially it was your fault, that there was something wrong and that your baby should only nurse every 4 hours. And it kept placing blame on the nursing woman.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge red flag for me.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, this is not good. And it didn't listen to the baby
Mm-hmm.
either. There was no listening of mom or baby in that program.
I feel like that's a common theme in maternity care in this country to begin with.
You're right.
So I feel like, if anything is going wrong, then it's probably, a woman's probably too fat, or she probably eats too much sugar, or,
Right.
so, you've heard these things.
Right.
Or, she didn't move around enough. She didn't hire a doula. She didn't do these things. So it's all her fault that these bad things happened to her. And I just don't believe that at all. Even when I look back on my previous birth experiences on my 2 C-sections, I don't look back and say, oh my goodness, gosh, I did everything wrong. It's, wow, I made the best choices with what I knew at the time. I feel like that's really important for people to know, is you can only make choices based on the information you have. And if you made the best choice with the information that you had, that was the right choice for you, even if things did not turn out great.
Right. And I think that's so important because so many people don't have that philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
that I did the best I could given the information and the options that I had. So often we women can be quick to blame ourselves in it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, if I had only, like you said, gotten my doula, gone to the chiropractor, or
Mm-hmm.
if a woman incurs a loss, it's my fault.
Right.
I shouldn't have drank that cup of red raspberry leaf tea or something like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I love that that is your philosophy.
Yeah.
One I'd like to see a lot of women embrace.
Yeah. And I try to use that with I'm going to say my doulas as if I own them, and that's not the case. With the women that I am privileged to work with, and they sometimes call me to debrief. And when they do so, every once in a while we'll encounter something that I'm not going to say they could have done better, but they could have done differently. But I'm always really careful to not say, what could you have done better? What did you do badly in this situation? Because that's not helpful. Our brains don't even assimilate information that way. We get defensive even when we're trying not to. So I try to word things more like, all right, so next time you encounter a situation like this, how do you think you'll handle it differently, or will you handle it differently? Always try to word things in such a way as moving forward based on the lessons we've learned, not, oh my goodness, I'm such a horrible person because I made this mistake, or I didn't do this very well, or, stuff like that. That's a really good way to burn out doulas really fast.
Your doula, I know don't call them your doulas, but your doulas are really fortunate to have that. I feel like a lot of times doulas, you get certified and you kind of get thrown out there. And unless you have colleagues
Mm-hmm.
or a mentor, there isn't anyone to process what happened in a birth and to even stop to think about what happened and what could I have done differently if I felt I had those options, and to really think it through. Or sometimes, again, you can blame yourself, and it takes someone that's been in the field a lot longer to say, let's step back, let's look at this.
Mm-hmm.
And no, the nurse doing that wasn't appropriate or whatever, but it's so valuable. That's so valuable.
Right. Yeah, I feel really privileged that we have a community now. I use it myself all the time. It's really important. And I would encourage your listeners, if they are doulas or involved in the birth world at all, to really gather your people together, because you need each other.
Yeah, especially right now.
Oh, yeah. So much so right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So, can you share a little bit, as your career advanced, you created this doula organization and really advocated for doulas in your hospital? Do you mind expanding on that?
Sure. And this was kind of triggered by a moment where there were I think three doulas in the area at the time, maybe four. I think there were three, and then there was one that was getting burnt out and was just hanging up her hat to be done. And they were all booked. I was one of them, and I was very pregnant at the time. And in that pregnancy, I was still attending births quite frequently, except for obviously around my due month. And someone called me and said she had called all the other doulas, and they were all booked, and I was her last hope. And I had to crush my own heart and tell her that I couldn't take her during that month because it was also when I was due. And I just, it was just this soul crushing moment. I'm sure it was for her too, but it was so poignant for me. And I never wanted to be in that position again. I always wanted to be able to, even if they'd called 10 other people to say, no, I can't take you, but guess what? There's like 20 more people you can call. So here's the next person on the list, or tell me more about yourself and maybe I can make a recommendation. So that was kind of born from that feeling that I had. It took a couple years before I was actually able to act on it, just in my personal life and such. But another colleague and I were sitting together and we're like, we need more doulas. We need more doulas in this area. And how are we going to get more doulas? The pay is terrible. At the time, to give you an idea, at the time, the going rate for doulas was about $200 a birth. And that was generous. And most people expected you to give them a discount too.
Right.
So it was not something that you could make a living off of. It was a hobby, and an expensive hobby at that.
Yes.
An expensive hobby with lots of pressure on your family. So, when we got doulas, they wouldn't last long. And we had these hospitals, we only have 2 in the area, and they were both really quite hostile towards us. Fortunately, they weren't too bad towards our clients. Too bad. They definitely didn't like that we were there. And that did show up a couple times in the care that our clients received as well. And that just wasn't acceptable to us either. So we had these things going on and sitting there going, well, what can we do to fix this problem? And, I guess we can make this doula association, but there aren't very many of us. So it's just going to be the 3, 4, or 5 of us that are here and whatever. We already talk to each other all the time anyway. But we decided it was important enough to do it. And so we sat down and we wrote up a code of ethics. And we sat down actually with like codes of ethics from 7 or 8 other doula organizations and picked the things that seemed really important to us and made notes on things that really didn't resonate with us to make sure that we worded our stuff in such a manner that it didn't contain those. And especially since several of us were midwives as well, a few doula organizations have things in there that make it difficult to wear multiple hats. And, I don't mean at the same time, but like at all.
Oh, okay.
So we wanted to make sure we addressed that and stuff like that. And then the other thing we really wanted to make sure we got in there was this horizontal violence thing that we saw all the time. And I'm not going to name other organizations,
Right.
but we had tried to become members of other organizations before. It was just too volatile and took too much energy that was not necessary. And it was just not a positive place to be. And we wanted to make sure that didn't happen in our community. So we put in some things for that and just sat down and said, okay, here it is. Let's just do it and put it together. And that was great for a little while. And then we thought, okay, but we need more doulas. So I guess we're going to have to start training them because we live in this little isolated area. And, when I say it's 2.5 hours to the nearest training, that doesn't sound like such a big deal, but the roads are sometimes impassable for months at a time. So
Wow.
it kind of is. I mean, we try. It's been scary. I've gone on those roads when there are whiteout conditions, and it's just really scary. My colleagues and I went to a midwifery conference in April, and our vehicle spun out 3 times, like just spun around 3 times in April. So it's just, yeah. So traveling is kind of difficult sometimes. And everybody here knows it. And so that's been a big obstacle towards getting people. And then we thought, well, gosh, we're all here. We know what we're doing. Why don't we just start training them? And so we did. We've been able to add to our numbers and get some good quality people going and continuing to support them too. I feel like that's been really key rather than, as you said before, you get your doula training and you're kind of thrown into the kettle. That's how I got my training.
Right.
But I wanted to do better for the people here. And so we actually have a shadow program now.
Oh, wwonderful.
Yeah, allows people to continue to do their doula training. They do they go to a childbirth class, which right now there's only one in the area. But they could get one from anywhere. And it's really flexible because we've encountered organizations who are so stringent in what hoops they want you to jump through that they forget about the knowledge and the skills that you need to have. Since we're a small organization, we can afford to be really loose in our guidelines. So we give them a checklist, but it's like, hey, these are the kinds of things that you should probably be doing. And then, meet with us frequently and we'll see where we're at. We'll see what you've learned. We'll see if you're ready to move on. Some people, they come to us and they've already been to lots of births, like they've moved from out of state, and we say, that's great. You're ready. You can skip this part. Or even sometimes it's just, you've done a lot. You have a lot of experience. I think you would benefit from reading these books. It's just a suggestion on helping them to continue their education and be better doulas or better birth workers in general. So that's kind of what we've done with that.
That sounds fabulous.
I think it is. It's working out. We're still in the middle of the path, and it's actually created a lot of the framework to communicate well with the hospitals here, at least one of them. The other one we're still struggling with. The other thing we encountered is we would meet with these nurses and say, well, what's your problem with doulas? Like, why are you so hostile? And then they would tell us things, and I'd go, oh, I can see why you would be hostile.
Yes.
But I know all the doulas, and I know they wouldn't do that. So I know all the professional doulas. So what was happening is you would have a family member, and this isn't to make a slam on family support at all, because they're very needed and amazing and we love them. But it's not the same as a professional doula who's going to behave in a certain way and be mindful that they're going to have to come back into those doors again. And so even though they're going to really stand up for their clients and do what's best for them, they're also not going to, punch any doctors. So, which didn't actually happen. I'm just using that as an example. I do have some fun stories, though.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, weird stuff was happening. But it turned out it was family members who would come in and they would say, I'm her doula, which in one sense of the word was technically true. They were acting in the role of her doula, but they weren't a professional doula. By creating this association, we have name badges, a logo and a name on them, and the nurses know what it is because we've brought them one. So it's, hey, these people are affiliated with us. You can call us. That was pivotal too. Here's the number you can call if you see anything weird. And we'll talk about it and we'll debrief it and see what we can do to make sure things like that don't happen again. Keeping in mind that it might also sometimes be an opportunity to educate the nurses on the rights of the women who are coming in. So,
right.
And that hasn't been used for specific incidents yet, but it has been used for general communication quite a bit. So that's been really nice to have that line of communication open and addressing. Anyway, now they know that when they see someone with our name badge in, that they're not going to see anything weird. And we go into these hospitals now, and most of the time, the nurses' eyes light up and they go, oh, good, I know that my patient's going to be well taken care of, and I'm going to have time to spend with these other patients. Less work for them, but also, they know that their people are going to be well taken care of. So that's been a great benefit there.
Your doula organization, it sounds like it meets so many needs beyond just having the training. You're communicating with the hospital staff. You're forming those relationships, which I know as a doula, when I have a relationship with the midwives and with the staff in the hospital, that transfers to my client.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if they hadn't, perhaps because those situations happen where maybe they haven't met the midwife.
Mm-hmm.
If I have that relationship, then I think it affords them a peace of mind. And then as a doula, as we mentioned, just being able to debrief with someone is huge. It really is.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what I would do without my debrief people.
It makes all the difference. So can you share a bit about, in Utah, what are your midwifery laws like?
Oh, our midwifery laws are the best. Like, they're probably the reason why my husband gets really wanderlusty after every couple of years. And the midwifery laws here are probably the reason why we've been here so long, because it's like, no, there are a lot of things I don't love about Utah, but they're really nice to their midwives. So we have licensed midwives, but it's not a mandatory license. So I am not a licensed midwife because the licensed midwives have some restrictions that I don't agree with. On the other hand, they also have some advantages and privileges that I am not able to access. So there's a trade-off there. Anyway, so it's really quite fabulous. Basically, the law just says we have to be honest about our training, and that just makes sense. You have to tell people how you were trained and what kind of midwife you are, and that just makes sense to me. Everyone should be doing that anyway. People weren't doing that. What?
Right. So you can become a certified professional midwife there. You can practice can you get your training through apprenticeship? It's what it sounded like.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. So I'm actually not a certified professional midwife. That's kind of a long story too. I have been in contact with NARM over that several times because one of the reasons why I wanted to be so flexible with the doula training is because I feel like, and I don't want to bash NARM because they do really good work. I don't want anyone to interpret this way. I've just been frustrated with them lately, how they're not very understanding of the geography in the Western United States, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
They're very insistent. No, you have to apprentice with another certified professional midwife. Well, guess how many we have here? 0.
Wow.
So the only way for me to train with a certified professional midwife is to move 2.5 hours away from my family for a long time, like not just for a little time. And they say, oh, well, you can just drive 2.5 hours to. I'm thinking to myself, what midwife wants an apprentice who takes 2.5 hours to get to a birth? I certainly haven't found any. I have had a few. I'm actually the regional representative with the Utah Midwives Organization too. And since getting involved with their organization, which I love, I have had certified professional midwives say, oh yeah, we'll come out there, we'll help support you. But it's definitely not a, we'll help you get your NARM training, your NARM certification so you can be a certified professional midwife. It's, we will support you as midwives because they understand what those roads are like too. In fact, usually we get someone to do it once and they're like, that was nice. Call someone else next time. So anyway, so it's not a very realistic expectation for that. And I've tried to negotiate. We're about to talk about creative solutions and stuff, and I've tried to negotiate a few of those with NARM, and they don't understand the problem enough to believe that there is a problem.
Okay.
And that's fine. It's their organization; they can do what they want with it. So, and I will support the good work that they do, even if it doesn't benefit me in particular, and that's all right.
So in your training as a midwife or there locally,
Mm-hmm.
then do you do a component of it online and then you apprentice with a midwife, an experienced midwife?
I apprenticed with an experienced midwife. I did lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of reading. And, like I talked about before, when I was having PTSD so badly, that manifested as hyper focusing on birth and human rights and childbirth and research and evidence. And a lot of the training that I received was self-taught actually during that time, which is not a path that I would recommend to anyone else in that particular way that I did it. That just happened to be how my life took me through it. And then in addition, my preceptor also held, it was like a mini midwifery school in her home for a while. So we would go and, we'd have our reading assignment. We'd come in and we'd talk about it. So there was a little bit of a formal aspect to it as well. A couple times I've looked into doing some of these online distance training things, not so much recently because
You're busy.
Yeah, of minimal benefit at this point.
Right.
But at the time, I was like, well, yeah, these guys have online things, and they were so expensive I was essentially getting the same information already locally, so I couldn't quite justify that. And I already have a bachelor's degree, so it didn't make sense to get a second bachelor's degree, especially when I couldn't qualify for any financial aid.
Right.
And then Indie Birth came out with their program, which looked really fabulous, but
Yes.
I really loved their work. By the time it came out, I was pretty much already done anyway, so.
Okay.
I thought, okay, I'll probably take some classes from them just as continuing education. And all midwives are always doing, well, hopefully all midwives are always doing stuff like that anyway. There are several midwifery schools in Utah, and whenever they hold skills training events, I usually try to go and take a few classes during their skills week just to review things, and especially like suturing, stuff that I don't do very often.
Right, because you have your ladies eat well and you protect their perineums,
That's
right?
Yep. And they birth in whatever position they want to. And guess what? When they do that, they usually don't tear very much, if at all.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a different experience, home birth can be. It really can. And it sounds like you have really dedicated yourself to advocating for women, for birth, for helping families to understand their options in maternity care, and to really help. The word that's coming to me is preserve, to preserve their autonomy in this process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Well, that's what brought me to this work. was that moment where I realized that my choices had been taken from me. And I thought to myself, how can this happen in this country? That's supposed to be this free country where our rights and our liberties are protected. And anyway, I'm not going to go down that road. But it was really a defining moment for me to realize that women don't have the same rights that everyone else does, especially when it comes to childbirth. And so, yeah, I definitely work really hard to make sure that women have options and that those options remain available to them. It's just so important. It's so important.
Unfortunately, my stepmom had liver cancer and she passed away in September. But going to the hospital with her, it just reinforced the lack of autonomy that we can have in the medical system. And as women, because sometimes her caregivers, she and I would talk about it, they would talk to my father, but not her. And she's sitting there in the bed. It's her body that's undergoing chemo and receiving treatment, and they weren't even talking to her. It was this crazy thing.
Oh, wow.
And it just reinforced to me that the way women are treated in the medical system, we have a lot of work to do. Let me just put it that way. We have a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's even worse for people of color,
Yes.
or people in lower socioeconomic background. But seeing that as well, and I've occasionally encountered people who say, oh, no, it couldn't possibly be worse. No, I don't care what the numbers say. And I think, no, think of how bad it is for you, and then multiply that by any number, and it'll probably be worse than that for them. And,
right.
So I don't have a lot of opportunities here for that. I'm trying to reach out and be more involved with our Native American population here.
That's so important.
But, I have a lot of things going on all at the same time.
Right.
So I'm just starting to get into that. Anyway, it's very frustrating to see people treated so badly.
It really is.
Especially from people that are not bad people. It's so bizarre. It's like this going into this twilight zone where you think, gosh, I know you outside of this setting and you are not a bad person. And I know you understand ethics and morality, but did you forget when you walked in the door? Did you take some kind of juice or something? I don't understand what's happening here, Anyway.
I think part of it is the system and the mechanism of the hospital itself. I remember years ago, we had a doula program with one of our major hospitals, and I was a part of that program, and I would be attending births, and you hear people talk in the hall, and you would hear the physicians or the staff walking down the hall and saying, oh, they're just a service patient. Oh, they're just a service patient.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes. And so it's happening. It's happening. These disparities in birth, they're happening. Yeah. And our system's broken. It really is. Yeah. And I think that with this pandemic, it's really shining a light on how our system is broken.
And providing an opportunity to fix it, because now everybody can see it. Even the people within who I think maybe didn't notice before. Kind of reminds me of the story of my colleague who shadowed me at a doula birth. And afterwards, when we debriefed, I looked at that birth and thought, oh, that was amazing. That was so empowering. She did fantastic. And this colleague told me how she was so traumatized because the doctor very vigorously was massaging her perineum while she was pushing. And it was kind of a wake-up call to me because I didn't even notice. I mean, I knew that it was happening. And we did some things to help circumvent it and make it stop. But it wasn't traumatic to me because I had been a doula for people who had been with that care provider before, and I knew he was going to do that. And I usually talk to my clients about that and help them know that they need to communicate their wishes if they want something else. But that was a wake-up call to me that I had become numb to that. And I thought, oh my goodness, I need to not ever let that happen. not that we need to be traumatized every time we see something that is not great, but we need to acknowledge it every time.
Right. And to be careful, I think, too, when we're doing a birth, to leave our trauma at the door as best
Yes.
we can,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes we see things and inside we're cringing, and you watch the family and they're so thrilled and happy with their birth.
Yep.
Whereas when we've seen what can happen in a home birth and our paradigm is different, their expectation of the hospital birth, they're so happy with their birth and they're thrilled.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, who am I to tell them that this was not a good experience?
Right. Exactly.
And it's a difficult thing because
Yep.
you don't want them later to go, Michelle, you didn't tell me how, how this
Exactly.
was.
Yep.
But at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
if they're happy, I don't want to put this, what's the word I want? I don't want to put the paradigm on them
Yeah.
that it should have been different.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you see something blatantly traumatic, you know what I'm talking about. But
Oh, yeah.
these
Yeah.
subtleties where we're like, yeah, she should reach down and touch that baby's head. How come she can't grab her baby and bring her baby to her belly? Or,
Mm-hmm.
fighting for delayed cord clamping and all these things we know.
Mm-hmm. It's funny you mentioned that too, because that's whenever I see this care provider do that, and now I talk to my clients ahead of time and just say, okay, so he likes to do this. So if you don't want him to do that, you need to tell him ahead of time. But whenever he does that and I can tell she's not happy with it, that's what I do is say, hey, you want to touch the baby's head? And I'll take her hand and, if she's okay with it. And when she puts her hand there, guess what? That doctor's hand goes away.
That's great.
And it works pretty well most of the time, at least with this care provider.
Great.
I know.
That's great. Well, and when I started my career 20 years ago, doing that vigorous perineal massaging, that was the thing.
Yep.
They thought that it was beneficial.
Yeah.
They did.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes we get stuck in our ways.
Yeah, we do.
And even I've found when midwives or nurses or physicians, when they want to do different by their families, they can't.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I shouldn't say can't, but it's very difficult for them. I mean, they can get fired from it.
Yeah.
So again, our system.
Which is so funny to me because those administrators are not physicians.
Right.
It's like, wait a minute, why are you making those decisions? Well, but that's what our organization does. Well, your organization is wrong.
Right.
Or whatever,
Right.
Or maybe someone else. Why does your organization have more, who has never met this patient before? Why do they have more power over this person than that person does? That just doesn't make sense to me. But,
Right.
as you were saying, this whole situation has shined light on that and highlighted all of our failures, because I'm going to say that it's only the hospitals that are, that have them, because certainly we midwives and doulas, and we're noticing things that where we're inadequate as well during this emergency.
Right.
We've had, I don't know if you've had an uptick in people wanting home births. We have.
Yeah.
And there aren't enough of us, even though Utah has great midwifery laws, like we talked about earlier. Even though there are lots of midwives in Utah, there's still not enough to handle the volume of people who right now don't really want to be in a hospital.
Right. Families are going to have to really make their plans carefully.
Yes.
To be able to navigate where they are going to give birth.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps laboring at home longer.
Right. Yeah.
And having to do virtual doula support. I think the good that's going to come out of this is we're going to find out that we can create new possibilities. Or did you see there was a graphic going around that was talking about suddenly homeschool and home birth are okay, right? Those of us that have been doing it for 20-something years, we're kind of like,
yep.
Yeah. So
yeah. Well, I was even talking to a family member recently who I was her doula. I was her family member and her doula during her last birth, and she's not pregnant now, but she was saying, gosh, I am not really interested in home birth generally, but I wouldn't want to go to a hospital right now. I would strongly consider it. I'm like, yeah, okay. And she's not exaggerating when she says that she wasn't interested before, because we talked about it. She knew I'd done it, and, I'd help other people do it. So it's suddenly not so crazy, which I can understand that as well, because I used to think it was crazy.
Right.
I thought it was crazy until the hospital didn't feel safe to me anymore. And I think that's maybe key, is people need to be able to give birth where they feel safest.
Yes. Because that's how you're in control, right? You have to surrender to the process.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to surrender, you have to feel safe. That's
Yeah.
key.
Mm-hmm.
It's key.
Yeah. So people ask me sometimes, "Oh, are you just so glad that there's all these people giving birth at home now?" And I'm like, if they feel safe there,
Right.
they feel safe.
Right. Are they doing it out of fear? Or
Right.
are they doing it because it was something that they felt led to do? They felt inspired to do it.
Yep. And, to be fair, because you're right, because when you make choices out of fear, it's a lot, it's a lot more hit and miss whether you can make the right decision. But I always tease that I was a really awful home birth client. I'm still kind of an awful home birth client, but I was especially an awful home birth client that first time. I sometimes think that my midwife may have been a little bit crazy to take me on, but I adjusted, and it turned out great. But I had no idea what I was getting into. It was just, oh, you mean I can go to you and I don't have to have surgery? Yes, sign me up. I don't care how much it costs, and it actually was way cheaper than the hospital anyway, but that's totally irrelevant. But yeah, where you feel safest is where you need to be. Making decisions out of fear is not the best decision, but sometimes it does turn out okay.
Right. And sometimes that fear opens you to exploring possibilities that you wouldn't have explored before. And you begin to
Yes.
educate yourself,
Yeah.
which you and I know is one of the most important keys in all
Hmm.
of this.
Yeah. And I think maybe sometimes it's not so much that you're making a decision out of fear as because of the fear or because of a situation, a door has closed to you. And so you're able to see and explore the other doors around you that are
Mm,
still open,
yes.
maybe is a better way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. So, share with us a bit about what inspired you to create the Coalition for Ethical Maternity Care.
Yes, there were a couple of different moments because it's kind of been on my mind for a little while. Now that I have these lines of communication open with the hospitals here, I try to use them to be proactive rather than reactive. And in this case, I did not get on things in time for things to just start moving without me. But it kind of been on my mind for a little while. The first time I heard, especially with the situation that was going on in New York, where not only were doulas being kept out of the room, but the partners as well.
Yes.
And then there were stories coming out of California where they were doing the same kind of thing. And in addition to that, they were taking their babies away for 2 weeks. And my mind was just so blown that these things were happening. I never thought, as hard as it is to move forward and make progress in maternity care in this country, I never thought that we would take such large steps backwards.
Right.
Uh, and it was very discouraging to see that, and I kind of had to overcome that a little bit and remember you have power, you can do things, but you have to do things for things to change. You can't just sit and complain about it. And I mean, you can put your energy towards something mentally, and that's something, but overall, it's not going to happen unless you do it. Or if somebody does it, then you can jump on board and support them. But nobody was doing anything. So we have 2 hospitals in the area, and one of them is one that we work really, really well with. They have some fabulous doctors, amazing nurses, and it's funny because about 5 years ago, they were awful.
Mm.
So I'm not going to take credit for all the changes. I can only take credit for a teeny tiny bit of it. We nudged some things, and then they saw how they were good, and so then they nudged them further, and it spiraled upwards to become this great facility to give birth out. So we tend to send our people there, or encourage our people to explore those options, I should say. Anyway, so an OB there, when this started happening, called us and said, hey, I want you guys to know that doulas and midwives transferring their clients will be treated as staff members. You still have to do a health screening, blah, 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 but we're not going to say you can't come in. You don't count as a visitor. And I appreciated that so much. Not only that they were doing it, but that they
Yes.
called us to communicate that. And in turn, we tried to offer some things. We let them know that our people would always be wearing their badges. They'd have picture ID so they could verify, this really is professional doula, or this really is her midwife, and a couple other little things that we could do for them to help reassure them that they were being respectful to us, and we were in turn going to be respectful to them. And it was just wonderful to have that communication happen and to have those solutions take place so quickly in this friendly area. And so for a little while, we didn't worry too much about the other hospital, thinking, oh, great, they're in such competition with each other. They're certainly not going to do anything different. And that was a lesson learned there, I'm going to say, rather than a false assumption. I'm just going to say lesson learned, because they decided that there would be no additional support people. You could have your partner, but only during active labor.
Oh,
And
wow.
Anyway. So one of the triggering moments was when a lady called me, and she was one of my, I can't quite call her a client. She was a close acquaintance who I had offered my services to pro bono because of some of her situation.
Mm.
And I told her, I'm like, you can have as little or as much as you want. If you just want to do prenatal counseling, that's fine. If you want me to be there, that's fine. If you don't, it's not going to hurt my feelings. So she was sort of a client, but sort of not also. And she contacted me, and I don't want to get too specific, again, for privacy reasons, but she had gone to the hospital. She was experiencing what she felt like was labor. And this was not the hospital that contacted us. This was the other hospital. And she went in there and she called me because she said, they won't let my husband come in. And I'm like, that's weird. Their website says he can be there. They said he can't be there unless, I'm actually going to have the baby. And I'm like, are you full term? Yes. Are you having contractions? Yes. Are you dilating? Yes. Then what's the problem? And she didn't understand what was going on, and there was no one there to really advocate for her. And this is also going to illustrate one of my failings. I am very glad that there are doulas out there who can do this virtual support thing, and that's just not my skill. And it's something I'm going to be working on. But it was clear she didn't understand what was going on. They were stopping her labor for some reason, and she didn't understand why. And her partner wasn't there to help her, and she didn't have a doula there to help her. And so, the best I could do for her, and then she had to go through a rather painful procedure. Well, I guess I can say they were trying to give her an IV, and it wasn't working, and they poked her a lot of times, and it was really, really painful. How many times that they had to do it. And I'm not going to say that was a criticism of the nurses, because some people just have bad veins and some people are dehydrated. It's not a criticism, but it was a painful procedure, and there was no one there to support her emotional needs.
Right.
And that was the problem. And
that's traumatic.
It was very traumatic. When she got home, she called me again, and she described it as the worst experience of her life. And it wasn't even that big of a thing clinically. And it wouldn't have been a big deal to have her husband there. And again, I obviously don't know the whole situation, because she didn't know the whole situation. That was also part of the problem, is there was no one there to help her communicate that she needed more information. But yeah, so that experience kind of jarred me into remembering, oh yeah, there are people still trying to give birth at that hospital right now, and they're going to have these problems whether someone helps them or not. So am I going to help them, or am I not going to help them? And, since I don't have a lot of doula clients right now, it just, I don't know. They needed somebody.
Right.
And they know that they need somebody is the thing. They just don't know how they can get their needs met right now. And I talked a couple times with some of my colleagues about this idea for this coalition. And it's funny because I was telling my colleague, I feel like, I remember the old Dilbert comics. And there was one where they were in a meeting and they couldn't talk about what product they were going to make until they named it. And so they were trying to figure out a name without knowing what they were actually naming. And I was telling my colleague, I'm like, I feel like that's where I am right now, except that I knew what I wanted. I just didn't know what to call it. And in the end, Coalition for Ethical Maternity Care seemed right. And then it occurred to me that there isn't one of those in normal times.
True.
And what does that say? Again, this whole situation is shining lights on our failings and giving us opportunities to improve, is how I like to reframe that. So this is not something that I want to just be around while COVID-19 is going on. This is something that I want to be a permanent coalition that can really help things and can help people come up with these creative solutions that are going to make things work better. I had another friend tell me about how she took her baby in for a well visit at the hospital recently. And it's funny because it's the same facility as this other lady who called me and had this awful experience. And she was telling me how wonderful it was. Clearly someone had thought it through. They had this drive-through experience or something. And everybody's needs were met. Everybody's emotional, physical, mental health needs were met. And they were able to do it and meet all those needs with this creative solution. And I'm like, how come we can't do that in maternity care? And the answer, of course, is we can. But there's so much, we have so much fear going on right now that it's hard for them to see past that. I contacted that hospital and I wrote them a letter with my colleagues to help me not say anything stupid or crazy or too mean. It's funny. I practice Kundalini yoga too. And so I vacillate between like these two sides of my personality, where one of them is I have this righteous rage and I want to protect women and, and preserve their autonomy. And I get really worked up and fiery about it. And on the other side, I have the yogi Heather that says, if you can't see God in all, you can't see God at all. And I go, oh, right. So I go back and forth sometimes.
Right.
And so I hope I don't give people whiplash when I do that. So on the one hand,
but it's
yes,
balance.
it is. I hope so.
It's balance.
Yes, I hope so. So I wrote a letter, and at first, the first draft of the letter was just livid. How dare you deprive these women of their support? You're not meeting their needs. This is not working. And then I stopped and took a step back and went, no, this is what's going to happen. They're going to read that. They're going to tear it up. They're going to throw it away because it's worthless to them. They're going to get defensive and they're not going to want to talk to us. So I turned that around and made this really lovely, kind letter that got all the same points across, but, was respectful of their needs. And we offered a creative solution. We said, okay, we understand you don't want lots of strangers coming in, lots of different people to be exposed to your staff, exposed to your patients. So none of the doulas here really care who is giving the support. They just want to make sure that their needs are met. And so, after talking to the other doulas in the area, we've agreed that this person is uniquely qualified to maybe be a temporary employee of yours. And you could hire her. She's certified through an international organization. These are her qualifications. She has good personal relationships with all of the OBs on staff. She plays nice with others, And we talked about some of the specific benefits of doulas, and not just general benefits to the women, but the benefits to the hospital specifically.
Right.
We focused on how they can shorten labor. They can be at home with their clients and keep them home longer. And so they just show up when they're pushing. They can reduce the number of inductions that you have and the number of C-sections, and both of those things make for longer hospital stays. I focused on the things that they could do for them and reducing the exposure to this virus. And I wasn't sure if I would get a response back or not, because their communication with us has been kind of spotty. But they did. They called me a couple days later and said that they had met and talked about it, which I was impressed that they at least talked about it.
Yeah.
But they said, no, thank you. Thanks, but no thanks. This is going to be our policy the way it is now.
Which is no doulas.
Which is no doulas, yes. Well, that's not, they said, which is one visitor. So either the partner or the doula,
Okay.
One person.
One visitor.
And I'm like, well, that's, how many marriages, will survive that? Anyway, so effectively no doulas, I'm going to say. There are some wonderful men out there who understand their limitations. And there are also some wonderful men out there.
Or you have to make that just tough decision.
Yes, exactly. And and then there are other wonderful men out there who just should be doulas. So there's both ends of the spectrum there. I know for one, my husband is wonderful, but he's effective labor support if someone is telling him exactly what to do and when and how.
Right.
And then he does a great job.
Right.
But he really does need someone whispering in his ear the whole time to tell him what to do. So otherwise, it's just so hard for him to connect to all the big emotions that are going on in the birth room. And I imagine there are many men like him. So I briefly tried to discuss things with them over the phone, but the liaison who at the messenger got hostile pretty quickly. And then she said, and I want to say this is an exact quote because it's burned in my mind, but I also know that, memories are what they are. So it may not be. But she said, there will be no creative solutions during this pandemic. And at that point, I said, thank you very much for calling me. Have a good day. Clearly there was no more productive conversation that was going to happen. And I teased that it was that was my here, hold my beer moment. Because it just wasn't realistic at all to me. Why would you reject the creative solutions when the you are coming up with are unethical? And in that letter, I did put in there that we are advising our clients and what their legal rights are.
Yeah, that is so significant.
Yeah, so I just saw that something needed to happen, and I had this coalition in mind for some time. and decided, okay, it's time. And for a little while, I had another little argument with God over it. Like, okay, I'm really pregnant right now. I'm trying to focus on making sacred birthing space for myself in my home.
Right. I was wondering.
And how am I going to do this? And, and the answer I got back was, don't you remember? Because I'm a little bit of an ambitious person, and not in like I want money or power or anything like that, because I really don't care. I always tell people my life goal is to heal birth in the United States. And the voice that came back was, I thought you wanted to heal birth in this country. And I went,
Wow.
oh, do I have to do it now though? Do I have to start that now? And the answer was, yeah, you do.
I have goosebumps.
Well, it was a goosebump moment. I'll share another little spiritual experience that I had in the course of having Lyme disease and stuff. One of the things it did is it attacked my brain. I had little seizures here and there, which they're not that big a deal. And, and I have them fully under control now with treatment. But it affected my memory. It affected my cognitive thinking. I think really differently than I used to. And I'm not quite used to it yet. And in another little argument I had with God, it was, how can I do this work? How can I be a good midwife if I don't have my brilliant mind anymore, And the answer I got back there was, I might get a little choked up at this one. It was, there are lots of brilliant minds out there, but what I need is your brilliant heart.
Mm.
And that was the other thing that came with that, with this particular argument with God, because we argue a lot. He's usually right, though.
You debate.
And that was, we debate. Yes, we debate. We discuss. I try to expand my understanding when I don't understand, because I really don't feel qualified for this work. I look around and I'm thinking, why is ACOG not doing stuff? Why is the CDC not stepping up? Why are they coming up with these stupid recommendations to separate moms from their babies? And I look at all these organizations of care providers and professionals that have been around forever and are well established and have solid, I'm not going to say foundations. They have solid roots, I guess, where they've just been around for a long time. They know how they work themselves. And they weren't stepping up and doing stuff. That was when that thought came to mind. There are lots of brilliant minds out there, and they're not fixing this. Someone needs to fix it. And I'm not going to say that someone is me, because it's probably not, but I can gather people. And I can unite people. I've done that before. And I can bring together the people who can solve it, who can come up with those creative and brilliant solutions. So that's what I did. And, I think that group now has 200 members.
Oh, wow, already?
Yeah, over the course of one weekend. Now, I think most of them are
Wow.
doulas, and then a few labor and delivery nurses for now. And I suspect there are a few birthing families in there. But I looked on there and I'm like, oh my goodness, there's like 200 people in here.
Right.
What happened? So yeah, it was needed. And we had our first meeting over Zoom, and there were some amazing ideas in there. Really great things that we can all do. And one of the new things that came up between that meeting and now is that we need to have not just one recommendation for everyone, but to have multiple recommendations for each person based on their roles. We'll come up with a statement soon, I hope. That's just a brief statement encouraging all care providers to embrace creative solutions and remind them that respectful maternity care is an essential service. Emphasis on respectful maternity care is an essential service. And compromising that level of care is unacceptable. I know that probably feels like they're being put between a rock and a hard place. And I have some sympathy for that on the one hand. And on the other hand, it's a situation, a little bit of their own making. Because these are the same people some of the same people, I should say, who are creating obstacles for midwifery care and birth centers. And imagine if this had happened and every town had 10 birth centers. It would be no big deal to say, hey, everybody low risk, go birth at the birth centers. And that would immediately solve all the staffing problems. It would solve not all of the infection problems, but much of the infection problems, because at least you're not sending them to the same place as the sick people.
Right.
And, it would solve so many problems, but we don't have that framework in place because it's been blocked for so long. And I hope that that's one of the good things that comes out of this, is that we see the value in these other ways of doing things, even if it's not for everyone. Because obviously, even in that situation, there's still some people who need to be in the hospital.
Yes.
There are people who are high risk who just need to be there.
Right.
That's kind of my hope, is that we can get some of that out of this.
And that insurance.
Oh, yes, insurance.
Yeah, insurance will cover home
Mm-hmm.
birth and birth center birth, because that's a big issue in all of this too. One of my midwife friends was saying the baby was born in October and she still hasn't been paid by insurance,
Oh, my goodness.
if they'll even cover it.
Well, we were talking about that in the Utah Midwives Organization, because in Utah, theoretically, birth centers run by licensed midwives can be covered by Medicaid.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, it hasn't ever happened, though.
Oh, wow.
So we have midwives accepting people with Medicaid who are not getting paid at all. They're working on that as well. But yeah, that's definitely a big part of the problem as well.
Right. Right.
So, but we've seen a lot of problems come up with insurance as this whole thing is concerned, not even just inside maternity care.
Right. Right.
One of the things I really hope, and again, this is the yogi Heather trying to bring things back into balance. I hope we can focus on, we talk a lot about the negative things that are happening, but in reality, it's hard to know how many facilities or care providers are actually doing those things. And it would be nice to turn it around and focus on, shine the light on these facilities and these care providers who are making good choices and have reasonable protocols in place. Like the one hospital in our area that contacted us said professional doulas and transferring midwives, you'll be treated as staff members. You're not going to be kept out unless you're sick. That seems reasonable to me. It's not perfect, but, for building an airplane as it's flying, that's pretty darn good. It's
Right.
a good starting place. I'd like to also, we'll probably get a little more, I guess, debriefing out of our systems where, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is happening. And then I hope that we can direct everybody towards, okay, let's look at the people who are doing it right and what are they doing right? And let's make recommendations out of that. Not ignoring the bad things that are happening, because we probably are going to have to bring those up too, but not focusing on it, not feeding it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you on that.
Yeah. And on the other hand, I'm also over the course of the weekend realizing, I need a lot more people to help me out doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have that now 200 member base that I can get volunteers from, and I have in front of me now on my computer here, I have my list of these are the skills that I have and these are the skills that I need, and I'm not going to develop them overnight, and we kind of need it overnight. So these are the people that I need
Right.
to do these things to get this ball really rolling, because we're just starting out. And I'd like I said, I'd like to release some professional recommendations relatively quickly.
Right. So if someone wants to join the coalition, they can find you through Facebook, right? But if you set up a website
Yeah.
or anything yet?
Not yet. That's on my list of people that I need. But yes, for now they can sign up through the Facebook group. And then there's the document on there where they can provide more information about themselves, what services that they offer. Because in addition to being this organization that makes recommendations, I'd like it to also be a group that offers support for people, kind of in the same way that our doula organization does, where we have support. And it's okay to also use second best choices. We're going to strive for the best, but it's also going to be a place where, the best doesn't always work out. Sometimes dealing with people that are not going to be interested, that they don't have the same goals. And so you have to work within what is available to you. Just like a doula goes into the hospital and you're on their turf and you need to be respectful of their needs and their turf, while at the same time advocating for your clients. And that's kind of what we're doing here. Like, this whole organization is like a doula for the whole maternity care system.
Oh, I love that.
Or maybe a doula for all the women in the maternity care system, where still it's on their turf, but we're going to advocate the heck out of it.
Right.
And do what we can. When that lady called me who was in labor and didn't understand what was going on, and they weren't letting her get her husband there, at first I told her, what her rights were and what she can do. And finally it came down to, okay, these are your choices. You can choose to stay without your husband. You can put him on a video call or something so you can at least see his face or whatever, or you can have him on the phone with you. You can leave if you feel that's what needs to happen, you can leave. And there were a couple other things too. I can't remember what they were, but I essentially just laid out, these are all of your choices. Which one feels good to you? And I think she did end up just leaving. They weren't doing anything helpful for her. And that's what made sense to her. I'm like, okay, that you can do with that. You do what you want then, and which reminds me, I wanted to offer specific solutions based on your role and the birthing family, the woman or her partner. They're in that as well. Like, they're in this, they're part of the team. Like, they're the team leader.
Right.
I want to make specific recommendations for them as well. One of them being, it feels like you're not the one who has the power, but we have more than we think we do. When this was all going on, I was actually talking to my midwife about it, because the hospital that is nearer to me is the one that is not on my good list right now. And, we've always had a plan that if we did have to transfer for whatever reason, it would be to the hospital that's 30 minutes away. And I was saying, but what if we don't have time to go 30 minutes away? And she's like, well, we can go there. Like, yeah, we can. And just so you know, I'm basically handcuffing you and my husband to me, and you're both coming in. and it's one of those situations where I just wouldn't take no for an answer. I would show up and it would be like, no, I have a history of obstetric abuse. There's no way I'm going into your hospital without my husband and my professional support person. It's not going to happen. So are you going to deny me care because of that? Because if you are, I'm going to document it and I'll go to the other hospital. But I am going to document it and we're going to have a talk later. But we have that power. I mean, legally speaking, they can't deny you care. They do have some power over who can come in and who can't. But policy is not the same as law. Policy applies to how the staff treats their patients. It doesn't apply to how the patients treat the staff. Within reason. I mean, law says that you have to be, you can't threaten them, you can't harm them, but you can make your needs very well known. And my personal needs are, I would need to have a professional support person with me, and I would not walk into a hospital without them. And I need my husband with me. I would not walk into a hospital without him. So for my personal plan, that's what I would be doing. And, and that would be an unfortunate situation if I had to actually use that particular tool and use my voice in that way when I'm probably, either dealing with the stress of a labor gone bad or whatever too. But I would do it because for me, part of it, I think, is that I've experienced the consequences of not using my voice.
Right.
It was horrendous. It was way worse than the fear that, everybody feels fear when you use your voice in that way to advocate. I don't remember that quote exactly, but always say what you need to say, even if your voice shakes. Always say what's right, even if your voice shakes, or whatever it is. I'm butchering that, but someone can look it up and figure out what the exact quote is. I've really learned that lesson in my life, especially with that forced C-section. At that time, I probably could have used my voice and said, no, this is what's going to happen, and this is how I expect you to treat me, or I will drive the 5 hours to the next nearest hospital, which is not realistic, obviously, as a solution, as far as a solution goes. But again, you do the best with the information that you have. But the information that I have now is that the consequences of not advocating for myself are way worse. That price is way higher than the consequences of speaking up and saying hard things to people. I still don't like doing it. I don't like confrontation. I still shake. Even when I'm doing doula work and I'm having to advocate, I still shake.
Right.
But I do it because I know it's worth it. And that's the same with this coalition. I feel underqualified. I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to do my best to delegate to people who are qualified in their particular areas, like getting a good website up. But it needs to happen. We need to have a coalition for ethical maternity care in this country. And if that's the only good thing that came out of COVID-19, gosh, that would be worth it.
Right.
Not to undermine the really awful things that are happening right now, but yeah, let's turn our hardships into something positive.
Right. Let's have post-pandemic resiliency.
Yes.
And use it as an opportunity to create growth and create positive change. So if you had one bit of wisdom that you would like to share with families, what would that be?
To use your voice, that you matter, and that your needs matter, and that your needs matter more than anyone else's in the room. And if your care providers aren't willing to acknowledge that, then you need to either find other care providers or find some sort of tool to help communicate that better. You have a lot more power than you think you do. And now is the perfect opportunity for you to step up and use it, even if it's terrifying. I promise you that it will be far more valuable and experience to you if you do step up and push through that fear and have your needs met because you're worth it. I think that would probably be the message that I would give.
That's really beautiful. So beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. If someone wanted to reach out to you, how could they do that?
Email's probably the best way at heatherbarson@usa.com, USA like the country. That's probably the easiest way. I check my email frequently. My professional Facebook page is facebook.com/sacredspaceheather. Those are a couple ways that you could reach out and contact me. I will eventually take clients again, probably sooner than I originally planned. I was going to wait, but I think circumstances are going to have me taking clients a lot sooner than I planned.
Whomever those clients are, we're going to be truly blessed by your presence.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So thank you for spending this time with us. Thank you for following the lead of your heart and that conversation that you have with God and standing up for women and families.
Yeah. I always say I would be in trouble if I did otherwise.
Yeah. It usually works out better if we listen, right?
Right.
So thank you all for listening. And remember that we're all in this together. Since the time that Heather and I recorded this episode, the website for the Coalition for Ethical Maternity Care is now live. And so you can find more information at ethicalbirth.org. And you can reach out by email at ethicalbirth@gmail.com. And if you're enjoying the show, please share it with a friend. And you can rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Because when you do, that helps get the show and the information out to more people. And please remember, there is support out there for you. I am offering virtual sessions, and my Birthies Method Childbirth Education course is available online with video chat sessions, and it includes instruction on the creating of a relaxation habit, something I feel we all really need right now. And it also includes the audio recordings to practice with. I will also be offering a complimentary course. Many prayers and much love to you all. We will get through all of this together.
For more great conversations like these, or to find out more information and access Michelle's library of amazing guests, go to birthiesservices.com/podcast. For more information on the Birthies method, Michelle's classes, meditations, and other services, go to birthiesservices.com.